被称为亚洲4小龙之一的新加坡，人口虽然只有530万，但经济富庶，秩序井然，被透明国际评为全世界最清廉的国家之一。而新加坡的成功对中国领导人似乎也有着特殊的魅力。1978年，邓小平出访新加坡，启发了中国改革开放的外向型经济发展模式。30几年来，万余名中国官员前往新加坡学习治理之道，南洋理工大学被冠上海外党校之称。中国共产党总书记习近平也曾多次拜访新加坡前总理、前内阁资政李光耀，称其为我们尊敬的长者。新加坡学得学不得，向来有激烈的争论。其实，规模略等于中国一个中等城市的新加坡，其治理模式本就不可能复制到人口规模、地区差异、政治体制复杂程度都不在一个量级的中国身上。真正有启发意义的是，新加坡在变中诞生，从来在变，现在更是一个变革关头。不久前，财新传媒总编辑胡舒立受邀到访新加坡，专访了新加坡总理李显龙。62岁的李显龙是新加坡国父李光耀的长子。2004年8月接替吴作栋，成为新加坡第3任总理。
I have been visiting these countries in this century quite frequently, and interviewed your father, then the 7 years ago. I'm so impressive about the prosperous and economic growth recently in Singapore. So please, would you let me know what's your vision of Singapore's economic growth?
In terms of income levels, we are at about developed country levels. In fact, higher than some developed countries. I think in terms of the depth of our capabilities, in terms of our technology, in terms of the strength of our enterprises, we don't have so many MNCs. We are not so strong in research, development, entrepreneurship. We want to keep on growing. We want to keep on improving the lives of our people materially, which means our GDP has to go up, but also in the more intangible aspects of life, quality of life, the environment we live in, the tone of the society, the way we treat one another. And that is continually work in progress.
So when it comes to Singapore's sustainable development, is there a roadmap in your mind?
I think that we have to develop connected to the rest of the world, and particularly connected to our region, Southeast Asia and Asia, a region which is prospering, a region which offers us many opportunities. I think our people are hardworking, they are reasonably talented, given the right education, they can do well. But I think the best way to make use of their talents and their abilities is not just to confine it within Singapore, but to connect to what's happening around us. So if a company sets up an operation in Singapore, it's not just for our market, but for the region.
How do you balance the SMEs and the state champions?
We don't have state champions very much. We have some companies which are owned directly or indirectly by the government through Temasek and a few other vehicles. But to a very large extent, we require them to operate commercially. They do not get special privileges from the government, neither do they carry special duties imposed on them by the government. So they operate commercially, they have their own boards which make decisions for them. So I would not say it's a division between the state enterprises and the SMEs.
Another question related with the balancing issue, that is maintaining competitiveness.
Yes.
And carrying the needy is always very hard to balance.
Yes.
How can we expect some policy change?
We have to keep a balance, because in every society there is that yin and the yang. The yang, which is the competitive element which drives the society forward, and the yin, the softer, maybe you can say the feminine element, which expresses our care and concern for one another, and the way we help one another go through life and form a society together. So we have to have the right balance. If you go too much towards competitiveness, you lose that cohesion and sense of being Singaporeans together. If we go all the way the other way and say, well, we don't compete, everybody will be first in class. And nobody will be first in class, and I think we will all be losers. And China has shifted from a very 大锅饭, iron rice bowl system to one which is very competitive. We have operated a competitive system with targeted significant social safeguards on housing, public housing, in healthcare, in education. And in this phase, with the competitive environment for Singapore getting fiercer, with conditions getting more challenging for the middle and the lower income people in many societies, I think we need to do somewhat more to tilt the balance towards the yin side.
在世界经济论坛发布的2013至2014年全球竞争力报告中，新加坡连续多年保持全球竞争力前3甲的位置。在竞争力诸要素中，新加坡被认为吏治清明，政府运行也极具效率。新加坡是全世界为数不多经济高速发展的同时，又能有效遏制腐败蔓延的国家。
Singapore is good at fighting corruption and has clean and efficient civil servants. China now is in the process of anti-graft campaign. What should be the next step, and any lessons can China learn from Singapore?
I think China's circumstances are very different from ours. Your scale is much different from ours. In Singapore, what we have tried to do is to have strict rules, to have transparent systems, so that if there's an exercise of discretion, it cannot be completely without checks and balances, but there will have to be some accounting. How was this discretion exercised? Why was it exercised this way? If anybody is discovered to be corrupt or suspected to be corrupt, we will investigate it and we will bring him to justice, however high up or sensitive a post he may hold. And at the same time, we make sure that we pay our civil servants properly, a wage commensurate with the quality of the officer and commensurate with the responsibilities which they hold, so that there is minimum temptation for them to do something on the side in order to take care of the family. But it has to go together. You pay people properly, but at the same time you must hold people to high standards and bring them to account and justice if anybody does anything wrong. And in the last couple of years we've had a few cases, quite prominent, some to do with sex, some to do with money, quite senior officers. It embarrassed us, but it cannot be helped. We have to follow through. You cannot be limp-wristed.
Actually, a clean government is a dream of China. So you mentioned about the accountability and the high payment. You said it's both together important,
Yes.
but which one is more important? Yeah.
I think you need both, and I think both are very difficult to do. Because to pay people well, you have to be able to justify and defend, and there's always a public sense that in the public sector you ought to take a sacrifice. And to some extent that is true, but if the sacrifice is too great, it's not realistic, the system will not work. Expecting high standards is also not easy because people have careers and livelihoods, and it's never a light decision to decide that somebody is not up to the mark and you have to move him out or maybe remove him from the service altogether.
Yeah, but what should be done at first? Because the high payment means credibility. If the officials, civil servants have no credibility, people cannot accept to pay them that high.
Yes.
But yeah,
so it's a chicken and egg problem. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere. You could start with one place. You could start with one service. In some countries, they have tried to do it, starting with the finance ministry, with the customs, with the immigration people, where you've got more opportunities to be tempted. There's no easy solution, but I see that China is taking it very, very seriously and catching tigers as well as flies.
Really hard.
It's very hard.
李显龙的父亲李光耀自1959年起任新加坡总理，直至1990年退休，但仍担任内阁资政。此后14年内，总理一职则由吴作栋担任，直到2004年李显龙接任，至今也近10年。半个多世纪以来，新加坡政治被打上了深深的历史烙印。
So can you comment that what is the pros and cons of having a long-term premiers?
Well, we have been lucky the last 50 years. We have had political stability and continuity in our system. So we have had turnover, new new blood, new generations brought in, new ministers, new prime minister. But at the same time, we've had continuity. So as you change in a smooth way. You don't have sudden jerks and bumps, and you avoid accidents. Mr. Goh Chok Tong was in politics for more than 10 years before he became Prime Minister. I was in politics about 20 years before I became Prime Minister. I think we were very privileged to have that long period of exposure, to learn what Singapore is about, to learn what the responsibilities are if you are in politics. And also for people to learn about you and to get to know you and to know your strengths and weaknesses and where you stand, what sort of person you are. So when you take over, people know. There's no surprise, there's no anxiety, but there's a smooth change of gears. We hope to have hope to have similar continuity going forward, but I think it would be a very great luxury to have prime ministers in future have 10 or 20 years of tutelage. I don't think we can guarantee that all the time.
Do you think there will be the third PM Lee after you and your father?
It could be. There are many Lees in the world. I think we are the most common surname in Chinese, amongst the Chinese. But I don't think that it goes in the family.
放眼世界，新加坡无论在经济地位还是国际关系中都面临巨大挑战。新加坡和香港被誉为亚洲比肩而立的金融双子星。新加坡一直将地理位置相近、同为亚洲金融与商贸中心的香港作为竞争对手。在税率制定、经济开放政策等方面，新加坡总是盯着香港不甘示弱。
And also some question related with China. What do you think of the competition between Singapore and Hong Kong? It seems that Singapore is in the leading position now.
I don't worry very much about competition with Hong Kong because I think we are in different positions. Hong Kong is very successful economically on the doorstep of China, servicing the Chinese market and taking full advantage of that. Singapore is in a different position in Southeast Asia. The Chinese market is important to us, but at the same time, we also focus on Southeast Asia, on South Asia, India, and on the rest of the world. So there's some rivalry, we watch them, they watch us to some extent, but I don't worry about that.
Financial center,
Financial center, I think we are in different positions. The big Chinese companies, many of them are listed H shares in Hong Kong. Smaller companies, some of them are in Singapore, but I think just a small proportion of all the business there is in China. I think the world is big enough for both of us.
在东南亚这个中美竞争影响力的战场，新加坡具有战略重要性。新加坡是东南亚各国中与中国外交关系最成熟的，华人社会的联系为两国交往提供了便利。与中国无领土之争的新加坡，能够在中国与其他东盟国家中起到斡旋作用。同时，新加坡也是美国在东南亚的重要盟友之一。
Singapore is a very mature state, while China is developing rapidly. So in your opinion, what is the most formidable challenge that China should pay special attention domestically and internationally? Two questions.
Domestically, to continue to restructure your economy so that you will not build up social tensions and you can continue to fulfill your full potential. Because your full potential, I think you can grow 7-8% for another 15-20 years quite easily. The energy is there, the determination is there, the people are talented and they're hungry. But to be able to get the systems working, the reforms through, the vested interests overcome, the administration to be efficient and transparent and honest, and the social stresses to be relieved so that people don't see Fu Tai and Guan Tai and all these other problems which are unavoidable in a rapidly changing society. I think that is something which will keep your leaders very busy for a long time. Internationally, China is becoming much stronger. I think it's becoming much more active in engaging its partners in pursuing its interests and defending its interests. And one of the major challenges for China is how to do this in a way where you are defending your interests, but at the same time you can integrate smoothly and peacefully into an international order. Because China will not be the most powerful country in the world. You probably will be the biggest economy in the world within a decade or two, depending on how you measure. But there are other very major, powerful and advanced economies, and China has to work with them, and there will have to be give and take on both sides. And even with small countries, there has to be give and take, and a sense that in international relations, as the principles of coexistence say, 平等互惠互利, equal, mutual benefit, mutual cooperation. So that is a very difficult balance to strike, because you will have a natural sense of pride. You've had Fu Xing Zhilu, 168 years, China is on the verge of arriving. You want to take our place in the sun. But at the same time, you want to fit in peacefully and be looked at by other countries with admiration and respect, and not just by other people saying, he's powerful, I have to pay attention to him.
Yeah, it's really hard for China to adjust to this kind of rapid growth, to its status and its power.
Yes.
How do you think about the rebalanced policy of the United States? Is that a show of U.S. strength, or is an adjustment the U.S. has to do because of the relative decline of its power in this region?
I'm not sure why you would say relative decline. I mean,
relative decline is weaker.
I think America has been in Asia since the Second World War, and even before that they were in the Philippines because they were the colonial master of the Philippines. And their presence has been welcomed by countries around the region all these decades. And I think that the Americans understand they have important stakes in the region. They have friends, they have interests, they have security interests, and it is important for them to be present in this region and to exert a benign and constructive influence. And at the same time, to develop a stable relationship with China, which is based on more trust and more mutual cooperation. So I would look at it like that. It used to be that every aircraft carrier in the region was American. Now, not quite so. But I think the Americans are formidable, not just because of their military forces or security presence, but also because of their economic ties, also because of their soft power. Because people enjoy watching Hollywood movies, enjoy listening to American pop stars singing songs. Even in China, so many of your top people, whether business or whether in government, send their children to study in US universities. So that's something which I think is
So you don't think there's
acceptable.
some power declining?
Well, relatively speaking, their proportion of world GDP will diminish as China grows, as India grows. But do they become less relevant to us? I hope not, because they've played a constructive role, and I think they can still do that.
So what is Singapore's understanding and expectation about a new type relationship between major countries?
I think from our point of view, what we hope it will mean is that the two countries will have a constructive relationship. There will be competition. There will be issues which will arise from time to time. And it cannot be that one side just gives way to the other and therefore we are friends. There has to be a balance and a give and take and a mutual understanding of where vital interests are, and then the ability to work together to deal with issues around the world which concern us all, whether it's global warming, whether it's nuclear proliferation, whether it's security in the Middle East, Iran. China has a stake in all these issues.
And how do you see Japan's future? Japan is the only country still living in the shadow of 1945. Which direction will Japan develop, and what kind of impact will it have on the regional development?
Well, Japan has actually played quite a positive role in the region over the last few decades. Economically, their investments have made a big difference. They invested Singapore certainly has benefited from their investments. Other ASEAN countries, even China, has a very big business with Japan. Their economy is now in some difficulty. Their population is declining. Their working age workforce has been in decline for now, I think, more than 10 years. And that's not easy to turn around. But they are still an advanced economy and still with a lot of potential to contribute to the region.
So do you have concerns about the China-Japan relationship and its possible negative impact to the region?
I think you cannot go to war because China today is not China in the 1930s. You are a unified country, you are a powerful country, you are a nuclear power. Japan today is not Japan in the 1930s. It's a totally new generation. If you go to Shinjuku and you see the children with multicolored hair, they are not the people who are going to shout banzai and charge and do a suicide attack. So I think going to war as a deliberate act is not imaginable. But frictions are imaginable, accidents can happen, and then consequences from those accidents, I think, can be very troublesome. And both sides will lose from it.
So how does Singapore position itself in the regional and the international geopolitical landscape?
We try to be friends with everybody. We stand up for Singapore. We are not a Chinese society. We want to be friends with China, but we also want to be friends with Japan. We also want to be friends with the US. And we've not done badly in that respect because over the last few decades, relations among these countries have been stable, and I hope it stays like that.
当前全球兴起贸易区域自由化的浪潮，跨太平洋伙伴关系协定及 TPP 至今已吸收了新加坡、新西兰、美国、澳大利亚、日本等12个成员，经济总量占全球的40%，贸易总量占1/3。2014年2月底 ，TPP 谈判部长级会议将在新加坡召开。作为4个发起国之一的新加坡，又是怎样看待 TPP 对亚太地区贸易和经济格局改变的呢？
As the founding member of TPP, Singapore has been the champion for free trade. To what extent do you think the TPP will change the trade and economic landscape of Asia-Pacific region?
I think it's a very significant step forward. The APEC countries altogether, there are 21. Ideally, all of them would come together and have free trade amongst them. But the 21 countries are very diverse and there are also political complications. I think it will be very hard to have an FTA which includes all 21 countries. So the TPP is a significant step towards such an ideal of an APEC free trade region.
The TPP was once supposed to be done by the end of last year.
It was supposed to be done by the end of the year before that.
Yeah. So what are the prospects for closure this year?
I think notwithstanding the previous missed targets, I think they're trying very hard and we ought to be able to close this year because if we don't close this year, there's not much time left on the American political calendar to get it through Congress and to settle the matter. And when time passes, loose ends get unraveled and then it will be a setback.
China has expressed interest in TPP, but also stated clearly that it won't be one in the first group on the treaty. What are the stakes for China?
Well, it depends how ready you are to move. When you entered the WTO, your Premier Chu Rongji made a very deliberate decision, and I think you should look at the TPP with a similar perspective from the economic point of view, that if you can join the TPP and commit to that, it will mean major adjustments for it could mean major adjustments for some of your companies or industries, but it should mean overall benefit for your economy. Of course, there's also a political angle and a strategic angle that you are joining a TPP in which Japan is also a partner, America is also a partner, Singapore, Vietnam, several Latin American countries are also partners. So trade is never purely trade. Trade is also an expression of who are your friends, who are your allies, whom you intend to work together with over the long term. And I hope China sees these as friends whom it wants to work together with over the long term. Although I think with Japan it will take a long time.
There are overlapping trade agreements, TPP, RCEP,
yes, many, all sorts.
And ASEAN +1, +3.
Yes.
For example, Singapore is in different trade pacts, so how can they coordinate?
I think it's very hard to coordinate. They overlap. You hope that together, taken collectively, they are a plus. But honestly speaking, it is a burden on businessmen to know all these rules and to comply with all the very different requirements severally, and to decide under which scheme they will get the most advantageous terms. But we just have to live with this and hope that over time we will be able to have a more open environment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I want you to send my hearty regard to your father.
Thank you, I shall do so.
我觉得采访就是有时候是你怕这个采访对象不够 smart， 有时候你怕采访对象 too smart， 有时候怕采访对象 arrogant。如果没有这些，其实就会觉得很舒服啊。我觉得他就是很有讲法，讲的也很清楚，又很坦率。和中国的关系也比较大，新加坡这些东西有些呢，我觉得是它可能可以作为中国的经验，有的可以作为对中国发展的参考。而且另外在这个地区，新加坡的角色，新加坡实际上是叫，我记得没有说这句话叫 small country but big power， 所以一个很重要的国家，像这个地区。所以我觉得呢，他谈的呢，其实很多话呢，都值得我们很好的去体会。